You are listening to Making Sense with Alison Blackler. Welcome to Making Sense. This is episode 24, and we are in the studio at Wirral Wave Radio in Hamilton Square in the heart of Birkenhead. And I am delighted to say that in the studio with me is my very special friend Charlie, and also we've got George, who is obviously the producer of the show, and quietly sitting in the corner we have our other friend Kath, who isn't going to be speaking, she tells me, but definitely Charlie is. Welcome, Charlie.
Welcome, thank you.
So we are going to chat this time about energy, about kind of how we all are sometimes hard on ourselves, sometimes things get in the way. We're going to talk about some of the things that give us fatigue, some of the things that tire us out. Charlie's got quite a lot of things to share with us, hopefully. We've got some ideas about how we can improve things for us, particularly if we are struggling. And we are also going to maybe touch on things like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And in a previous episode, I did say that I would come back and talk about seasonal affective disorder, which if we've got time, we'll do that too. Last episode, we had my very other special friend, Ash Nugent, and we talked about the power of creativity and how we can turn a challenge into a success. And I think that was a great message to us all, that sometimes things happen that are really difficult, but they often have a really good lesson, don't they? Yeah. So let's have a think about, introduce yourself a little bit, Charlie, or do you want me to do that?
We can do both.
Let's do that then.
So, yes, I'm Charlie, and we know each other because we used to work together at Wirral Drug Service in Tranmere many moons ago. So I think probably 22 years ago we've met each other.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, it's a long time. It's a lifetime.
It really is. It feels to me like it was another lifetime, obviously, because we've both moved on so much from those days. But I think, sometimes you meet people, don't you? You meet lots of people in life, and there's certain people that you meet and you just...
It's the old adage, some for a season, some for a lifetime, isn't it? And that's why I picked the songs that I did, because for me they represented our history and our journey. So, yeah.
I love that. Brilliant. And one of the reasons why I wanted to share the studio with Charlie today is because, as you know, I like to bring someone else in, because it's not just me talking, it's us having kind of shared experiences. And one of the big messages with this show is to help people see that they're not alone, and hopefully that something that we say will resonate and help us be able to move forward, because it is difficult. And I think one of the biggest things that we can think about when we are talking about our reality, what is going on for us, is to be able to think about how we accept what is going on. And sometimes I'm always saying to people in that moment, what is it that you can do to accept what's going on? But for some people, they are holding almost their own version, if you like, of their reality so tightly that it actually becomes one of the biggest challenges, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And a lot of when Charlie and I worked together, a lot of our work was definitely helping people in that harsh reality, really, sometimes, for some of our clients. What did we call them? Yeah, clients. Service users. I guess, yeah. That feels like a long time ago saying it, like even like that. But I think one of the things that I'm really interested in us paying attention to is to not be disappointed, to not feel regret, to not feel that denial or doubt, and how we can work with that. Yeah. So shall we get a tune going to get us started? Sure. I think it's time to get us started with the tune. So the first song that we have picked is Katy Perry, Firework. And this was released in 2010. And Katy is said to have said that despite hardship life gives, you should never stop trying. And I love the line, you don't have to feel like a waste of space. Your original can't be replaced. I hope you enjoy it.
Do you ever feel like a plastic bag drifting through the wind, wanting to start again? Do you ever feel so paper thin, like a house of cards, one blow from caving in? Do you ever feel already buried deep, 6 feet under screens, but no one seems to hear a thing? Do you know that there's still a chance for you, 'cause there's a spark in you? You just gotta ignite the light and let it shine. Just on the night, like the 4th of July. 'Cause baby, you're a firework. Come on, show 'em what you work. Make 'em go as you shoot across the sky. Baby, you're a firework. Come on, let your colors burst. Make 'em go you're gonna leave 'em all in You don't have to feel like a wasted space. You're original, cannot be replaced. If you only knew what the future holds. After a hurricane comes a rainbow. Maybe a reason why all the doors are closed, so you could open one that leads you to the perfect road. Like a lightning bolt, your heart will glow, and when it's time, you know you just gotta ignite the light and let it shine. Just on the night, like the 4th of July. 'Cause baby, you're a firework. Come on, show 'em what you work. Make 'em go as you shoot across the sky. Baby, you're a firework. Come on, let your colors burst. Make 'em go you're gonna leave 'em all in Boom, boom, boom. Even brighter than the moon, moon, moon. It's always been inside of you, you, you. And now it's time to let it through. 'Cause baby, you're a firework. Come on, show 'em what you worth. Make 'em go as you shoot across the sky. Baby, you're a firework. Come on, let your colors burst. Make 'em go you're gonna leave 'em all in Even brighter than the moon, moon, moon. Boom, boom, boom. Even brighter than the moon, moon, moon.
Welcome back. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, great song.
Brilliant song, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think something that we were talking about is the lyrics sometimes of songs. And it's so important. I think it's almost a strategy in itself, isn't it, to stop and actually listen to a song, or even Google. I mean, doing this show, I'm often Googling what songs mean, because and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Because it does, it's like a metaphor, isn't it, in itself, just the lyrics.
And as we were just saying, you know, it's an important song for me with my children, but obviously my interpretation of the lyrics are very different to theirs, I guess. But for me, it's a powerful song.
Yeah, definitely. I love it. So I know that there was somebody said, I think it was Karen, somebody who listens in, she was saying that the show is made her stop and listen to tunes in a different way. So for me, that's a result in itself. Okay, I want us to just kind of focus on some of the challenges that we have if we feel like we're struggling, and there's various guises of struggling. There's lots of people out there struggling at the moment, struggling because it's winter, struggling because of all of the media and what we're being told, struggling just in their own minds, their own energy. I think one of the first things that people often say, how do you get yourself out of some of these situations? I think the first point that we can cover is being able to accept yourself. And for most people, self-acceptance can be really hard.
Yeah.
And I think for me, acceptance is that ability to be able to accept everything, really, all the good and the challenges, and not fight with yourself. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think probably to put some context in as to kind of my experience of that, because acceptance is hugely important in wellness and well-being. So to put this in context for me, having recovered from a chronic illness, the acceptance of that illness within the acceptance of myself, it's a very, very complicated thing to do. But you have to kind of start right at the beginning, don't you? With the small things and, you know, the acceptance of ourselves. It's fundamental, really.
It really is. And I think we naturally, as humans, we're so critical of ourselves anyway, aren't we? I mean, we're the first ones, you know, we say we're often so hard on ourselves, and yet you would never say some of the things that you think about yourself to your friend, because you probably wouldn't have any friends. So I think just being able to kind of learn, like you say, to accept yourself and whatever has happened. And that in itself, like you say, is probably our starting point. Hard as it is.
Yeah, and it is difficult.
Yeah. And we're not under any illusion how difficult it is. Yeah. And then I think it's that, then it's moving on, then it's facing that, your reality, accepting or acknowledging what it is that's happened. Because again, people are often in that space, that mindset, they're wishing that it hadn't happened. They're going over and over, if this hadn't happened and what ifs and all these things. Again, just being able to accept, while it isn't easy, again, what your reality is, accepting your current situation can at least keep you a bit more present.
Yeah.
A bit more in the now. And how important would you say being present and in the now is?
I think it's hugely important for me, because part of becoming unwell. So again, for some context, so I had a diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome, so ME, and which, as we know, is an invisible illness, which is an interesting thing in itself. It is. I was thinking about it earlier, and I was thinking about it took me back to a time when my father-in-law died, and we were sat in the car going to the funeral, and we're sat in the car watching the world carrying on, and our world has kind of stopped, if you like. And that's a little bit what it's like with a chronic illness. It's my whole world had come to a grinding halt, and yet everybody else is continuing around. So, you know, that process is a loss. And then you go through all of those, that, you know, the loss, the grief, the anger, the resentment. So coming to an acceptance can quite often certainly allowed me to then kind of reflect and think, well, actually, okay, where do we start, and how do we go from A to B? Yeah. We're not even looking at A to Z. This is like, yeah.
So it is that being present, isn't it? But I think what I'm hearing there is you had to start, you realise at some point that you had to start with
you have to start where you are.
Yeah, accepting that it had happened.
Yeah.
And whatever it is for anybody listening here, that's your it, isn't it? Yeah. You start from there.
I think there's a book, Start Where You Are, by, I can't remember her name, but there's a book, and it's a good book because it is about, this is where I am, this is what I've got, let's make some sense of it.
Yeah. Because otherwise you're either in the past about how things used to be, and again, this is for any context that we're talking about, or you're wishing that it was different. And in that wishing, we can often pick up frustration, we can often pick up fear, we can often pick up anxiety, resentment.
Anger.
Exactly.
And we're just treading water.
And that's not helping you.
Thank you for tuning in to Making Sense with Alison Blackler.
Okay, so we've got that we have accepted whatever it is that's going on, and we've acknowledged that that is our reality, and we've established that there's no point, even as hard as it is, fighting with wishing it hadn't happened or wishing it wasn't that situation. So then it comes to that point where we have to be honest, really, with, again, that whatever it is that's happened, but being able to start creating the new reality, I think, again, takes a lot of honesty for yourself, being true to yourself. Because if we deny our current reality, especially if it's a bad one, we're not going to be able to get away from it. And I think, you know, while that sounds so simple, so many people forget that.
Yeah, I would agree.
They forget that in that moment, don't they? So dealing with difficult things and accepting difficult things is a way to get to the good stuff. But as we said, it's not easy, and it takes practice and practice and practice.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about responsibility, because for me, I think it takes that step of actually stepping into your personal responsibility, and for me, acknowledging how I got into that reality in the first place. And I appreciate that for lots of people, their reality is not of their own making. But for me, there was certainly a sense of that.
Mm. And I think even then, it's how you can still manage, even if it is something that has happened and it's out of your control.
Yeah.
Because again, we can get so terribly stuck blaming something else. Yeah. The government, the weather, a family member, an ex or whatever. And we get so stuck, don't we?
Yeah.
So I think taking full responsibility for your part in it, or how you're going to change it. And again, we remember that it can be anything. For you, it was your condition. For lots of people out there, it can be anything. And I think this is all relevant to making those changes. So always thinking about what's the one thing that I can do today that's going to make a difference to whatever your reality is.
Yeah.
Is that small steps. And, you know, often you'll hear me say on this show, and a lot of my work, I'm often saying, what's the one small thing that you can do? Because I think so many people get overwhelmed, don't they, when they tap into the bigger stuff. It feels like there's so many things they need to be doing, should be doing. It just becomes quite exhausting.
I think as well, for me, it's important to acknowledge the small things that we are doing. And I think we can really easily overlook all of the good work that we already put in and all of the effort that we make in trying to make sense of what's happening and how we're going to move forward.
Yeah, I love that. And I hear that all the time. People are so busy looking at what they haven't done, what they haven't achieved, comparing themselves to others. And actually, just being able to notice that you got up and got dressed today is an achievement for some. And I think being able to celebrate that is the place to start. Brilliant. So I think something else that is really important, before we have another tune, is to make sure we are okay with that things aren't okay. You know, so again, just being okay with if you've made a mistake or something's happened that you didn't do very well that day. Again, I hear people talking a lot about, well, I failed at that, I didn't manage to do that. And yet, you know, the effort needs to be acknowledged, but also there's no point in feeling like the mistake was a problem. It has to be a learn. As you know, we can view our mistakes not as a failure, but as an opportunity to grow or learn, or what could I do tomorrow that's different from today. And these small steps, when people are really stuck, can be the bit that gets them moving.
Yeah. And moving away from that idea of perfectionism and needing to get it right first time or to be perfect at something straight away.
It's just destroying that stuff, isn't it? We had perfectionism as one of our topics quite a few months ago, and we had Carla Caswell on, and she was a previous perfectionist, and she was sharing a lot of her kind of experience and thoughts around that. And, you know, again, it's not a goal. When I'm coaching people, I'm often reminding them it is not a goal to be perfect. No, it is a goal.
Far from it.
Yeah.
In fact, I actively work towards the opposite these days, just to be, because that's what works.
But this is the tapestry, isn't it? The tapestry of life is that there is things we're going to get wrong, if that's the right word, but that'll be because there's a something that's of much more quality almost in that.
But to not be perfect takes courage, and that takes vulnerability. Yeah. And that's why it's tough.
Yeah. I love that. I love that we can say that. And I think that's one of the things that I'm really, doing this show for, really, is for us to just all be able to say those things. That is not our goal, and it's okay to be be yourself, to be different.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really important. Okay, let's have another tune. And this time we have chosen a song from Phil Collins from 1993, and it is Both Sides of the Story. And this song is a reminder that it is always worth listening to or trying to understand both perspectives of any situation. So I kind of thought that was quite timely. So I hope you enjoy it.
Job, a little respect, so he could get out while he can. We always need to hear both sides of the story. Both sides of the story. The neighborhood peace is shattered. It's the middle of the night. Young faces hide in the shadows while they watch their mother and father fight. He says she's been unfaithful. She says her love for him is gone. And the brother shrugs to his sister and says, looks like it's just us from now on. All we always need to hear both sides of the story. We need to hear both sides of the story. And the lights are all on. The world is watching now. People looking for truth. We must not fail them now. Be sure before we close our eyes. Walk away from here to hear the signs. No, 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 no. Here we are all gathered in what seems to be the center of the storm. Neighbors once friendly now stand each side of the line that has been drawn. They've been fighting here for years, but now there's killing on the streets. While small coffins are lined up sadly, now united in defeat. Oh, we always need to hear both sides of the story. Well, the lights are all on, the world is watching now. People looking for truth, we must not fail now. Be sure before we close our eyes. Walk away from here till you see both sides. No, 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 no. White man turns the corner, finds himself within a different world.
Online and mobile.
Alexa, play Wirral Wave. Wirral Wave.
Welcome back. Bit of Phil Collins there. We were just saying he's obviously had something medical. He's got a condition now that's changed, I imagine, everything for him. And probably he's having to do some of this accepting and working with his reality and reflecting on how he's going to move forward. So I'm sure it can happen to any of us.
Yeah.
So if you've just tuned in, we are in the studio with my friend Charlie, and we are just talking about kind of when things are difficult and whatever your it is that's created the difficulty, we're thinking about how we can help ourselves. So I think one of the next things that I think is really important for us to do is to kind of own your outcome, really work towards something. And again, I think the message often is make it small, make it tangible, make it real, but to be able to work towards owning something that becomes part of your reality. And I think that again in itself takes work, takes strength, but also it's noticing the little successes, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And actively noticing them as well, even if it's about writing them down, because it's so easy to sort of just, when you go to bed at the end of the night and perhaps think, oh, I'll think about what I did well today. But ultimately, if you write them down, it's kind of more cements it, I think.
I think so. I'm always talking about you connecting your head, so your thoughts, your heart, how do you feel, through your hand.
Yeah.
So you connect your head, heart and hand. I think there's something very powerful about writing it down again. And I think writing it as well with a pen and a paper and not so much typing it.
Yeah, definitely.
There's definitely something very powerful in that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a short while, about journaling and writing it down, because I've got something new and exciting coming out to talk about. So what else do we need to think about? I think the other thing is to not let fear get in the way.
That's a big one.
Yeah. And again, what fear in itself, obviously, if you are feeling very emotional, that usually means that you've triggered your emotional fear center, which is normal. And again, I'm often remembering and reminding us all that it is normal. Your first response to everything is your emotional brain, which could be fear-based, and that is 5 times quicker than any reality. But especially fears around what other people will think of you when whatever our it is, has happened. And I think that's really important, isn't it? We must be willing, I suppose, to do what's right for us. And if that's a unique thing and everyone else is saying, no, that's wrong, or maybe they're not saying that, but you think they are. I think that's also something that's really important for us to think about. And then for me, it's about being able to look at what you're good at. Look at your skills and your strengths and how you can use those to get yourself started, move forward.
And for me, it's important to for me to acknowledge with myself that growth anxiety, that fear of moving forward, it might be uncomfortable, but it's still a growth anxiety. So even if something's uncomfortable and we're sitting with that discomfort, if we're still progressing, however gently that may be, it's still a positive pain, for want of a better expression.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really valid point, and something that we do need to keep remembering is that we often looking for distractions from this feeling that we've got, this uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm lived proof that sitting with discomfort does work, because that is part of my own story. But I am always encouraging people to just sit with it sometimes, sit with that feeling, that horrible feeling, that sick in your tummy, or that real deep sadness, but sit with it, because in it there will be some growth. Like you say, there'll be some realizations about what's right for you.
And the irony is, the sooner we allow ourselves to sit in that discomfort, the sooner we process it and the sooner we move through it. So distracting ourselves from it just keeps it within our framework, whereas if we're kind of meeting it, and it does it's a challenge. It takes courage.
It does take courage. It takes a lot of strength.
But it's worthwhile.
Yeah. But I think the other critical thing about this whole piece, when we're talking about working with our struggles, is it is all about timing, because sometimes distractions are the best, because it's the right thing to just phone a friend up and go out and have a walk or do something, and that is distracting you from this feeling. We are naturally going to want to get away from this kind of feeling. So sometimes it's appropriate to distract yourself, but then other times it really is time to sit with it and work out why it's there. What is it telling you? And again, when we start to think about how we can write things down, get it out of your head. You know, I'm often saying to people, just write and write and write and write about whatever it is that you're feeling, thinking, doing. Get it out. Just let it all out and see what happens. See what your head, heart and hand starts to connect with.
Yeah.
I know
ultimately, you know, we can do all the work in the world, but sometimes you just need a cocktail and a good friend, don't you?
Well, they are always the ultimate distractions, for
They
sure.
really are.
But I think it's about, you know, for me, it's always about a jigsaw, isn't it? It's about all of the little bits that we all need to do. There's no good and bad, really, in a way. Obviously, there are some bad distractions that we can get into. But, you know, even if you want to sit and scroll through social media for a while and that's a bit of distraction for you, fine, but be careful. What you do when you're doing it, and secondly, how long you're going to do it for, because there's only so much you can listen to.
And then if you're going back into that idea of, you know, our own responsibility, if we're aware of what we're doing and acknowledging that, and we're balancing, because that's what it's about. We have to balance how we approach things, and we have to be patient with ourselves and kind to ourselves.
I think patience is absolutely massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
So many people are impatient and wanting answers, and I think we're worse than ever at that. Immediacy, we want, you know, you can have a parcel delivered the next day. We want almost to have this improvement literally the next day. And I think patience actually is the only thing that I think a lot of people have to practice, and they're almost forced to practice when they're in some of these type of situations. So I think we are fair to say that we can accept that some struggle will always be a reality. That is kind of, we're not, again, when we think about perfection, we're not aiming for that. We can't shy away from all challenges. We need to work out how we're going to get comfortable while we're working through the challenges as they will come. And as I'm always saying, the best stuff, we learn the best stuff out of our most challenging situations. I often use the metaphor of going out sailing when it's like a mill pond. Would you become a good sailor? No. But if it was a bit choppy and a bit windy, would you get to be a good sailor? Yep, you would. And I think life is like that, really, isn't it?
I mean, I would say, and I think some people would find it a little bit odd, but I am grateful that I became ill, because out of that nonsense, you know, created a better way for me. It's a much more fulfilled sense of kind of just getting on with life. It's much nicer. Yeah. But I would never have there was nothing wrong with life. You just potter around, don't you, doing your thing. Good friends, you know, good job, all of that. But ultimately, you know, things change, and things have changed for the better.
I love that. And I really admire you for saying that you're grateful to something that was really hard.
Yeah.
And as your friend, I know how hard it was.
It was dark. Yeah.
But I am grateful to you saying that here, because I think there are so many people who are in situations, loss of any kind, you know, whether they're losing a lifestyle, a person or whatever. It's so hard to be grateful when you're in that horrible emotional place.
And interestingly, just hearing you say that, I mean, that's exactly what I did. I lost a lifestyle. I lost a person. You know, loss is, it's everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It really is. But yeah, it's brilliant to hear you say that. Okay. I think the last thing is for us to think about, how do we help ourselves about making those little steps forward? So little mini goals, you know, because again, if you said to somebody who was in this sort of situation, what's your goal? I want to feel better. Great. Of course you do. But that isn't really a goal, is it? It's got to have so many chunks and so many little parts.
Yeah, it's about, well, what does better look like for you? And breaking it down into the minutest example. And it could be just, do you know what, waking up and going and putting the kettle on and making a cup of tea. And if that's a sign that something's improved, because actually they've got downstairs and made the cup of tea.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's just being okay with however small it might feel, if we are at that starting point of feeling really, really stuck.
I think I saw a picture quite recently of a ladder. There were two ladders, and one ladder had lots and lots and lots of rungs, and one ladder had maybe 5 or 6, and the image was the person trying to climb onto the next rung of the ladder that had only a few. And the idea is, it doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter how many steps you've got. They need to be achievable. You need to be able to put your foot on that rung and actually move up. So if you set your bar too high, then it's always going to be unachievable. It's just going to feel hideous and overwhelming.
I agree.
There's no rules.
There are no rules, and there is no right and wrong about how different people are. I mean, one of the things that I'm often drawing out for people is, the people, if you imagine sort of big falls, so big ups and downs, and the idea is that we're not going to have it flat. It's not going to be straight. We're going to have days where we feel for some reason low or anxious or worried, but it's about how we build those bridges so that the dips aren't so down. You fall so far down, and then all the energy to come back up again. And then you're on the top for a minute, and then you back down. What we want to do is sort of build little bridges, and they're all strategies, small strategies. What's that one small thing that you can do today to help yourself move forward? Because all of what we're talking about, whether you're thinking negatively about yourself or you are feeling like you've got no determination, no motivation, of course, it does affect your energy, your body, your connection with your mind, your physical self, your emotional self. And it's all of these things that often then totally wear us out. And then you've got no energy to actually do anything, and it just becomes that vicious circle, doesn't it? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, let's have our next tune, which is one that you've picked, Charlie. Tell us all about why you've picked this tune.
I picked this because it took me back to the beginning of the three of us, because don't forget Kath's in the room too. And when we worked at the drug service, I think in some respects, I think we've talked about this a little bit, it was a little bit of the wilderness years, and it was a little bit chaotic, but it was, it was good in some respects. But this song, whenever I hear it, it transports me straight back. And for that, then that represents the beginning of our friendships.
Love that.
And also it's a great song.
Brilliant. So what are we having?
So this is Maybe Tomorrow by the Stereophonics.
I hope you enjoy it.
Walking around with me. It was time and I'd rather be high. Think of what me outside about a rainbow smile, but they're free. They are free. So maybe tomorrow I'll find my way. Being the upper side of down, being the inside of out, but we breathe. We breathe. I wanna breathe in an open mind. I wanna swim in the ocean, wanna take my time for me. Oh, me. So maybe tomorrow I'll find my way.
welcome back. You enjoy that?
Perfect.
Yeah, good
Bit
tune.
of nostalgia.
A bit of nostalgia. It's a while since I've heard that one, actually.
Yeah,
so
good.
I hope everyone else enjoyed that, because I think it's
It's a beautiful song.
good to play tunes that aren't necessarily all, the ones that are always played if you do listen to other radio stations, etc. Okay, so I think we've kind of looked at a lot of the challenges, a lot of tips all the way through that piece around how to help yourself, which I know there's a lot there. And I think, remember, it's always that one small thing. But I think one of the things that we can come back to, as we've hinted at it, but as a strategy that is very powerful, is journaling. A lot of people say, well, what is it? How do we do it? But it is very much recognised as an effective way to reduce stress. It helps with anxiety, sadness, depression. It helps you focus your mind and sometimes organise what you're doing and how you're thinking. And it's a great tool just to open up your mind and open up your thoughts. And I know you really rely. Well, I don't know. Rely. I don't know. How would you describe it?
I would describe it as one of my non-negotiables.
Love
to
that.
be fair,
Yeah.
Because throughout my recovery, it has been so important for me to acknowledge what was working.
Yeah.
So even on the days where I felt like nothing had gone well, to just acknowledge the tiniest thing, and it doesn't need to be anything big. It's just that, and it's all relative. It's personal to me, and my journaling, it ebbs and flows in different ways, and it can be anything from just a free, you just take out a piece of paper and you just write whatever comes out of your head, just as a release of that sense of overwhelm that sometimes we have when we've got all this stuff, in our brain, and we just can't get our heads around anything. Or it can be something very specific. So at the moment, for example, every night I write a list of the things that I'm grateful for, and I can be grateful for this, for my connections with my best friends, or it can be for tomato ketchup on my, fish finger toast. It's relative, but It's just important to acknowledge the things that I've been pleased to notice in that day.
And I love that, because it reminds us that from a brain perspective, something that it seems so small in a way, actually is you just acknowledging what's good for you, what's right for you. Yeah. And actually the brain doesn't know the difference between you passing a huge exam and
it's just
doing something
hitting
small.
The pleasure button.
It's hitting the pleasure button. You get the release of nice, good hormones, oxytocin, happy hormones, and you feel good. So it doesn't matter how small it is. And I think that's where people get stuck. They think it has to be some amazing achievement for you to note it down. But actually, no.
And it's private. It can be anything you want. It really, it's not important. It doesn't matter whether you can spell. It doesn't matter whether you can articulate, putting sentences together. It is literally, it's like verbal diarrhea on a piece of paper, isn't it? Really?
It really is. And then when you're just able to pause and say, what's your intentions for the day, or what's your wins for the day, sometimes you can use that to look back a little bit and say, well, what was going on that day that made me feel good? Okay, maybe I could repeat that today. Because often, again, we're forgetting or stopping or not doing what keeps us on track.
Yeah. I mean, I do wins every single day. Only 3. It doesn't need to be. The list doesn't need to be endless. But another thing that I do, which I love doing at the moment, and this is a new thing for me, and like I say, these things ebb and flow, is I acknowledge myself for something. And I also recently have added in a joy, because I felt like I needed to really pinpoint something that had given me joy. And again, it can be something big, it can be something which other people might find very insignificant. But it's about acknowledging it for me.
Yeah. And then it's being in the moment, isn't it? And I think you then start to make it a habit, because we are looking for that good feeling that you get when you're able to notice that you've done something good that day, even though something else might not have gone well. And that is the practice of it. It's not only just being able to kind of reward yourself, it's actually being able to pause and actually have to think about it. So it moves you away from the list of things that you didn't achieve.
It creates some perspective as well.
And some inspiration, really, to keep you going. Because again, from a mind perspective, it can be the smallest thing. You've acknowledged it, you've made a nice cup of tea and you're enjoying it. And your mind doesn't know the difference between that and you completing a marathon. it still thinks it's all good.
Yeah.
So it's a good little plug for me, because this is the first time I've actually announced this, but we have created a journal which helps you pause each day and write some of these things down. So some of your intentions, some of your plans for the day, and then being able to pause maybe at what you're grateful for later on in the day and what your quick wins are. So George and I have been working with Annie, and we've created it, and you've had a look at it.
I've had a look, and I really like it. I like it because I know it might sound a bit weird, but it's easy on the eye. I think it feels like something I would want to write in.
Yeah.
It's just nice and flowy, a little bit creative. There's nothing difficult about it. It's just very simple, nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really excited to launch it. For me, it fits with the rest of the book, you know, certainly the first book. And it, for me, feels like it's an offer to everyone who needs this, because I'm often saying to clients and people I talk to, get a little book and write down your quick wins and your bits and pieces. And then someone, a little while ago said, why don't you make a book that really helps people, point them in the right direction for what it is that they need to be thinking about, so that they too can have whatever it is that they're looking for.
I've just remembered actually that I didn't start this process when I got ill. I started it before, and it was you that encouraged me, and you gave me a beautiful little William Morrison notebook, and I started writing like affirmations, so like I am kind, I am beautiful, just reinforcing it. Didn't matter what it was, and that's when I started, and I did it every day. But if I didn't do it, I didn't make it a big deal. And I think that's really important as well. It doesn't want to become a chore. It's got to be something that you want to do.
Definitely.
So it doesn't become part of that perfectionist kind of mentality.
Yeah.
It's just, actually, I like doing it, so that's why I'm going to do it.
And then when you do like doing it, and you do it and you feel better, then you are more likely to do it again the next day. But equally, the one I'm going to put out there is 3 months worth, which obviously is a good time that you might have created a habit. But there aren't any dates in it.
Yeah.
Your day one can be whatever you want it to be. Yes, it's in weeks, but I think absolutely we do not want to be self-beating and saying, oh, I'm rubbish because I haven't filled it in today. If something else has happened and you haven't, that's okay. However,
if you can create one good habit, let it be this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it does, it really does. It ticks so many boxes.
Yeah.
And that's why we've decided to create one, so that it gives you the ideas about what, again, it's linked to all the book. It really is the linking to the mind and how we can get the best out of ourselves. So it's like taking yourself to the mind gym.
I mean, I've looked a lot of these. I mean, we've talked about this because I write my own little book now, because I could never quite find the right layout for me. And I have to say, having seen a lot of these, I really like the layout in your journal. I think it's really good, really nice.
Brilliant.
And I think that people, if they choose to use it, I think they'll get an awful lot from it. I think it'll be a pleasure for them.
Yeah, I hope so. That's the idea of it. That's the idea behind me. And obviously you helped me. You looked at some of the original ideas and things, so you have helped craft that together. Okay, so we're going to play a tune that Kath has asked for. I know she's not going to come anywhere near the microphone rather, but she has asked for Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. So I've not heard this tune for ages, so I hope you enjoy it.
And I'd give up forever to touch you, 'cause I know that you feel me somehow. You're the closest to heaven that I'll ever be, and I don't wanna go home right now. And all I could taste is this moment, and all I can breathe is your life. And sooner or later it's over. I just don't wanna miss you tonight. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand when everything's made to be broken. moment of truth in your lies, when everything feels like the movies. Yeah, you bleed just to know you're alive. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. I just want you to know who I am. I just want you to know who I am.
Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. Do you enjoy that, Kath? Nodding. She's even nodding in the radio. She's not even daring to speak.
She won't on principle now.
I love
I'm not
it.
speaking.
I love it. Brilliant. Okay, so we are coming to the end of our show. I have absolutely loved having you in the studio, Charlie.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been lovely just sharing some ideas, some thoughts, some experiences that everyone hopefully can resonate with and take something. Remember, it's that one small thing that has made sense to you. Take that and have a roll with that and see where you go with it. So in our next show, George and I have created, or will be creating, a best of, because we've been doing this for nearly a year now.
Impressive.
So we're going to have some great tunes, but we've also kind of got a smorgasbord of great techniques and tools and tips, all from some of the guests that have been on throughout the show during the year. So hopefully there'll be lots and lots of little bits and pieces that we'll bring together and again play some great tunes. And then I'm also happy to say that in the new year we will be having fitness expert Angie joining us in the studio. And I feel like that's a good time. Everyone's always talking about, right, we've eaten too much at Christmas. How are we going to get ourselves from the couch to wherever you want to go? So Angie's going to come and share some of her thoughts and ideas as a PT. And she's actually my boot camp instructor. So I can definitely vouch for her techniques and things. Okay, so you've been listening to Wirral Wave Radio, Making Sense. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Charlie for sharing your wisdom with us.
You're very welcome.
Thanks to George for producing the show. Thank you to the Wirral Wave team for this opportunity. And most importantly, thank you to you for listening in. We will leave you with a great tune and another tune that Charlie has chosen to finish the show. And this one is About Damn Time by Lizzo.
It is.
Good tune.
It is a great tune.
Brilliant. Well, I hope you enjoy this tune. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Myself and George will be back in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, be kind to yourself. Bye for now.
It's bad bitch o'clock, yeah, it's thick 30. I've been through a lot, but I'm still flirty. Is everybody back up in the building? It's been a minute, tell me how you're healing. Cause I'm about to get into my feelings. How you feeling? How you feel right now? Oh, I've been so down and under pressure. I'm way too fine to be this stressed, yeah. Oh, I'm not the girl I was or used to be. But I might be better. Turn up the music, turn down the lights. I got a feeling I'm gonna be alright, okay. Alright, it's about damn time. Turn up the music, let's celebrate. I got a feeling I'm gonna be okay, okay. Alright, it's about damn time. In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up. Feeling fussy, walking in my Balenciennes, trying to bring out the fabulous. Cause I give a fuck way too much. I'ma need like 2 shots in my cup. Wanna get up, wanna get down. That's how I feel right now. Oh, I've been so down and under pressure. I'm way too fine to be this stressed, yeah. Oh, I'm not the girl I was or used to be. But I might be better. Turn up the music, turn down the lights. I got a feeling I'm gonna be alright, okay. Alright, it's about damn time. Turn up the music, let's celebrate. I got a feeling I'm gonna be okay, okay. Alright, it's about damn time. Cause you know what time it is. I'm coming out tonight. 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 Okay. Alright. It's about damn time. I'm coming out tonight. 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 Okay. Alright. It's about damn time. Yeah. Yeah. It's about damn time.
Thank you for listening to Making Sense with Alison Blackler.
You got me loose and set me free.